Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Tuesday to you. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their Thanksgiving week. Hopefully you're one of the lucky ones who doesn't have to work or go to school this week. Let's talk tropics. We're still talking about some of the bigger hurricanes that we've seen over the hurricane season. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Hurricane Milton. It was the fifth of 5 hurricanes that hit the Gulf Coast this hurricane season. By the way, if you didn't know, the record number of tropical systems hitting the Gulf Coast in one season is 6, and we had 5 this year. And I'm still watching the southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea. I got some models that are indicating some tropical development in the early part of December, while other models are starting to back off, but we'll go through all of those things. It's pretty unusual to see something develop in December, so if we do get something coming up in the next 3 or 4 days, that would really be something to put the icing on the cake, as I said on Facebook, of this very strange 2024 hurricane season. I will say that I am extremely happy to see some sunshine peeking through. This is one of those weather situations that we get during the fall and the winter time here in Louisiana. You get a cold front that swings through, and you automatically assume that the skies are going to clear. But occasionally you get this little warm layer of air that's just above the surface below the cold air that comes in. Because remember, cold air sinks down to the bottom. Sometimes it can kind of undercut some of the warm air, and you get what's called a temperature inversion. And when that happens, it's a classic forecast buster for all of us meteorologists that are here in South Louisiana. And throughout the mid-morning hours, as I kept seeing those gray skies, I'm like, man, we are going to end up in this inversion thing. We're going to have clouds all day. We won't get anywhere close to 70 degrees, but now the sunshine is out there, so I'm excited that we're seeing the breaks in the clouds, and also having that cloud cover kind of stick around. It might help me out with my afternoon high, because if the sun would have come out a little bit quicker, I think we'd probably be able to hit the lower 70s, but I'm still going with 69 for the daytime high. We're holding at 67, and that dew point is running at 56 with a light breeze out of the north at around 7 miles per hour. As far as any rain, we had some that went through yesterday evening. I had about a 15-minute downpour right after the sun went down here at my house in the middle part of Lafayette. And today we're looking at a fairly clear radar. We've got a couple of showers that are still lingering along the Florida Panhandle, but other than that, I think we're going to stay dry for the remainder of the day. And you can see there on some of our traffic cams that those clouds are finally being able to break up. And we're getting some sunshine out there, so that's going to help us out with our temperatures. I know a lot of folks are going to be heading back on the road, I think, probably starting tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a little bit of traveling on Thursday, but a lot of folks I know are on the road over the course of the weekend. But right now, looking at the roadways, everything is dry and sunny out there, so a pretty decent travel day across South Louisiana. We might run into some rain late Wednesday night, early Thursday with another front coming through, and you've probably heard that's also going to usher in some much colder air for the second half of the weekend. But I wanted to go ahead and revisit Hurricane Milton. Milton was really kind of an eye-opening hurricane because it was one of those that formed early on, I think it was on a Sunday, and when I had done a Let's Talk Tropics on a Friday, a lot of the computer models were just kind of indicating a broad area of low pressure, even a weak tropical depression. And as you all know, Hurricane Milton became a very strong hurricane in a short period of time. It became the most powerful storm of 2024, becoming the second most intense Atlantic hurricane ever recorded in the Gulf of Mexico, behind only Hurricane Rita. Now, it did make landfall on Florida's west coast on October the 9th, Milton hitting just 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene, and it was the 13th named storm and the second Category 5 hurricane of the season. Now, it formed there in the Bay of Campeche on October the 5th, rapidly intensifying to a Category 5 strength with winds at one time at 180 miles per hour and a pressure of 897 millibars. It became the 5th most intense Atlantic hurricane on record. It fluctuated a bit in strength, but weakened to a Category 3, fortunately, before making landfall in Siesta Key, Florida. Now, the storm caused widespread devastation across the Sunshine State, triggering deadly tornadoes and severe flooding. Milton claiming 35 lives and $85 billion in damages. After it crossed Florida, Milton weakened and dissipated in the Atlantic. Of course, ahead of the storm, Florida declaring a state of emergency and many evacuating those coastal areas, while preparations also took place there in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. So amazing what Hurricane Milton was able to do, going from a tropical depression to a Category 5 hurricane in just, I think it was a little under 24 hours. That is the definition of rapid intensification. I know it scared a lot of folks. It did weaken to a Category 3, and I will say when I watched the power restoration across central Florida, they did a really good job of getting people energized once again after such an intense hurricane coming through, and a lot of folks evacuating and getting out of the way. So Helene, of course, was the deadliest of our hurricanes in the 2024 season. A lot of that coming with the significant flooding that moved into North Carolina, but Hurricane Milton giving a lot of folks a scare there on the west coast of Florida after Helene had hit just a couple of weeks before. So one definitely to go in the record books, and Hurricane Milton is going to be one of those that a lot of meteorology students are going to be studying, and a lot of us already as meteorologists are going to be studying for a very long time to come. Well, let's go ahead and see what's going on out there right now. Of course, we've got that cold front that has gone ahead and moved through Louisiana. We had that residual cloud cover, a little bit of an inversion. So our eastern sections and then going down into Iberia and St. Mary are probably going to hold on to some cloud cover as we've got more of a ridge of high pressure that will build in. This is not the super cold stuff. That's not going to come until we get into the weekend. We've got another front that's going to come through late Wednesday night, early Thursday that will start to bring in that colder air, and then we've got kind of a series of cold fronts that will keep it rather chilly Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even going into the early part of next week. Wave height and direction, I really wish I could get some folks a better boating day out there, but with this series of cold fronts, it's a little harder to get that. So we're still looking at 3 to 4 foot seas in our nearshore waters and probably 5 to 7 in the far offshore waters. So it is still pretty rough out in the Gulf of Mexico, even though it's a relatively pretty day, especially over our western waters from Vermilion Bay westward to the Texas Gulf Coast. Kind of gray though as you go over toward Grand Isle and the southeastern part of our state. Down in Central America though, this is in the western part of the Caribbean. This is kind of the area that we're watching right now, as we've got kind of a gathering of moisture, and we've also got a bit of a low pressure area trying to form right here in that particular region. So the water temperatures are quite warm over the southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea, and you can see that there's a lot of thunderstorm activity there, and it's producing some decent rain here over parts of Cuba. Some flooding rains are going to be happening there, but you probably notice on this side, you see those clouds really kind of rocketing off toward the northeast. There's a lot of wind shear over the far western part of the Caribbean Sea and the southeastern Gulf and the western Atlantic right there. So wind shear is not going to be in its favor for any kind of development, but if we get a bit of a trough of low pressure to develop, the forecast has it kind of drifting a little bit farther off toward the southwest, maybe pushing toward the Costa Rica area or Panama or Nicaragua. And if it were to do that, it would have a little better chance for some development. And that's what some of the models are calling for, which again would be very unusual to see, because by the time the models are showing more of a closed center of circulation, we have already turned the page into December. So this would be something that might actually form during the month of December, joining just a handful of other tropical systems that have done that since 1851. But you can see there's a lot of moisture there over the western part of the Caribbean Sea. So that is one of the places that we're going to watch. Part of the reason why we think there might still be a chance are those water temperatures that are still very, very warm here in the western part of the Caribbean Sea, 28, 29 degrees Celsius. That's mid to upper 80s on the Fahrenheit scale. And even the eastern part of the Caribbean still has some very, very warm waters there, approaching 86 or 87 degrees. And there's a lot of heat potential, oceanic heat potential that's in this area too. You got a high area there just south of Jamaica, and it's kind of high back here over the western part of the Caribbean. Not as high where we think the low might kind of drift, but still it's not like what we're seeing up here in the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico where things have really cooled down. So that's why I think there might be just a little bit of a chance if we can get the wind shear to kind of weaken in that area. It's already relatively weak south of Jamaica and then stretching its way down toward the Panamanian coast. You see that wind shear. Remember how I kind of showed you how the clouds on that, all that moisture was kind of zipping off toward the northeast? That's because of all of that wind shear that's right in here northwest of where all of that convection is happening here over the western part of the Caribbean Sea. So if the wind shear stays light, you've got high ocean heat content, you've also got very warm waters, and then on top of that, this has been one of the weirdest hurricane seasons that we have seen in quite some time. So If we do get something to develop in December, again, that would be something very rare. But as far as 2024's hurricane season would go, I'd be like, oh, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because it has been a very strange one and a very bottom-heavy hurricane season on the calendar. We started out with Beryl, which was a Category 5 way back in June, early part of July. And then you remember everything kind of shut down for about 6 weeks or so, and then things really started cranking once we got into the second half of September through October, and even through November we've had a number of storms. So let's just kind of real quick, we'll go over the different models. And again, I'm only going to go out 7 days, and the GFS model still has kind of a broad low pressure area trying to develop, but as we get into December, you start to get a little bit of a closed low trying to develop right there off of the Nicaraguan coast. But that wouldn't be until about Monday or Tuesday of next week. So you're talking, what, December 2nd, December 3rd. So if we get something to form, again, that would be one of those very rare December forming tropical systems. Euro model showing more of a broad area of low pressure, not anything real defined, maybe a brief little closed low there off the Colombian coast. But really what we're seeing here is more of a trough of low pressure rather than a closed center of circulation. And the Canadian model seems to be a little bit closer running with the European model, also showing a gathering of moisture over the southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea, but not really a closed center until you get into that very last frame, which would be going out until I think Wednesday of next week. So you're talking about, what, December the 4th, I think that would be. So again, if you get something to develop there, it looks like it wouldn't happen until we got into November or into December. And the Icon model also showing more of a broad center of low pressure, but then you see that little closed low there, kind of at the tail end there, moving off toward the west, toward the Nicaraguan coast. So again, right now the GFS is the most robust. I would put the Icon model as right under the GFS, and then the European and the Canadian model are forecasting generally just a trough of low pressure. So that would be something to see. The Euro models, though, are still showing anywhere between 30 and 40% of a tropical system developing between now and next Tuesday rather. Today is Tuesday. Yeah, today's Tuesday. I get confused on these holiday weeks. But between now and next Tuesday, the Euro is still showing that there could be some tropical cyclone formation there over the far southwestern part of the Caribbean Sea. And just to kind of give you an idea of how rare tropical systems forming during the month of December are, this is the first 10 days, and this goes from 1851 all the way through 2023, is I believe what that graphic says there at the bottom of the screen, 2023. Yep, there it is right there. 1851 to 2023. And you can see you've got 2 of them that have formed in parts of the Caribbean Sea. And then the rest of them are kind of out here in the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean, with the exception of one that fired up here over to just to the east of the Windward Islands and drifted off toward the west, which is a little unusual for a November tropical system, or even a December one, because anything that's going to develop in this particular area usually would shoot off toward the northeast. And even something that would develop here this late in the season would also tend to get sucked up by a frontal boundary and turn off toward the northeast. So you can see there are only 10 that have formed between December 1st and December the 10th. So it is very rare to see a tropical system forming this late in the season, and especially as you go into the first part of December. So very rare, but again, based on how 2024's hurricane season would be, would any of us really be surprised that something crazy like this would happen during the first month of December? I will say the National Hurricane Center still is saying there will be no tropical activity here over the next 7 days. And of course, looking at climate, it is again very, very rare to see any tropical systems forming, especially as we start to turn the page into the month of December. So that's what I've got for you today. Tomorrow, at least for right now, tomorrow is going to be the last Let's Talk Tropics of the hurricane season. We may have a couple of special editions if we get a Tony to kind of fire up here in December, but I'm planning on taking Let's Talk Tropics off for Thanksgiving and for Black Friday. But again, kind of stick with my social media pages if something is forming over the western part of the Caribbean. I'll fire this program right back up as quickly as I was able to put it together. So we'll do Let's Talk Tropics if we get a new tropical system. But as of now, tomorrow is going to be the last one of the hurricane season, and then we're going to do some kind of a midday show where we're going to talk about different weather features and how they would affect Acadiana. But if it's quiet here in Acadiana, we may kind of study some weather features around the country that are a little bit more unusual, maybe some things that we don't normally see here along the Gulf Coast. And together we can study these weather systems and kind of learn a little bit more about them, especially when we get into these big winter storms that start to move across the country. Well, again, I hope you enjoy these videos. Please like it, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. And also please listen to these great radio stations, Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. You can hear my forecast daily on the morning shows, also midday and the afternoon drive, each and every Monday through Friday. And in between all of those forecasts, make sure you follow my social media pages both on Facebook and X, and also continue to subscribe to Acadiana Weather Today. Even though Let's Talk Tropics is going to be taking a break toward here at the end of the season, I'm going to try to throw something else together where we can talk about other weather stuff that goes on during the winter time. So I would really like for you to join me for that, and you can find out all the information on that on my social media pages, but that's probably going to start sometime next week. Well, I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. I hope you have a great Tuesday. Enjoy the sunshine as it starts to come back out, and I will see you on Wednesday morning. Have a great day.